She collapsed on the hospital steps, her newborn crying in her arms. No money, no home, no hope. The security guard's words still burned. You can't stay here. But as she stumbled onto the street, desperate and broken, she crashed into a man in an expensive suit, a man whose driver quickly stepped forward. What she didn't know? This collision would change everything. He was Nigeria's youngest billionaire, and he had a secret that made this moment impossible to ignore. Stay with me, because what happens next will shock you. If just the beginning has touched you, leave a like and subscribe, because this story goes much further than it seems. The Lagos afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Adana stumbled through the hospital's main entrance, her 3-day-old daughter wrapped in a thin cloth against her chest. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, still recovering from childbirth, but the hospital administration had been clear. Without payment, she couldn't stay another hour. Please, she had begged the billing officer just minutes ago. Just one more day, I have nowhere to go. The woman behind the desk had looked at her with practiced indifference. Madam, we are not a charity. You've already stayed 2 days beyond your ability to pay. Security will escort you out. Now, with barely enough strength to walk, Adana descended the hospital steps, each one feeling like a mountain, her vision blurred with tears and fatigue. The baby, Zainab, she'd named her, meaning beautiful, whimpered softly, sensing her mother's distress. Adana had no plan. Her landlord had evicted her when her pregnancy made her unable to work as a housemaid. The baby's father had disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant. Her family in Enugu had disowned her for getting pregnant outside marriage. She was 23 years old, completely alone in Lagos, with a newborn and exactly 400 naira in her pocket. Before continuing, if you want to see more stories of resilience and unexpected encounters that change lives forever, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. As she reached the bottom step, a wave of dizziness overtook her. She staggered forward, trying to catch herself, but her legs gave way. She fell directly into someone, a solid presence that prevented her from hitting the ground. Easy, easy, a deep voice said, strong hands steadying her shoulders. Adana looked up, squinting against the sun. The man before her wore an immaculate navy blue suit that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. His face was handsome, angular, with concerned eyes that studied her with unexpected intensity. Behind him, a sleek black Mercedes waited, its driver hurrying forward. "Ogre, are you all right?" the driver asked anxiously. But the man, Ogre, the driver had called him, wasn't looking at his driver. His eyes were fixed on the bundle in Adana's arms, where Zainab's tiny face peeked out, her features scrunched in discomfort. "I'm sorry," Adana whispered, trying to step back. Her pride wanted her to walk away, but her body wouldn't cooperate. "I didn't mean to—" "You're bleeding," the man interrupted, his voice sharp with concern. He pointed to her wrapper, where a dark stain was spreading. Adana looked down and felt another wave of dizziness. She hadn't realized. The postpartum bleeding that should have slowed was getting worse. "Tunde, get the car," the man commanded his driver. Then to Adana, "When did you give birth?" 3 days ago, she managed to say. His jaw tightened. "And they discharged you? In this condition?" "I couldn't pay," Adana admitted, shame burning through her weakness. "They needed the bed." For a moment, the man said nothing. Then he made a decision that seemed to surprise even him. "Come with me. I'm taking you to a different hospital." "No, I can't. I don't have money for—" "I didn't ask about money," he said firmly. "You need medical attention. Now. Drop a comment below telling me what you think this stranger's true intentions are. I read every single one." Before Adana could protest further, Tunde brought the car around. The man, she still didn't know his name, guided her gently into the back seat, treating her as if she were made of glass. He slid in beside her, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough to steady her if needed. "I'm Chukwudi," he said, as the car pulled away from the hospital. "Chukwudi Okoro." Even in her weakened state, Adana recognized the name. Everyone in Lagos knew the Okoro family, real estate moguls with holdings across West Africa. Chukwudi Okoro himself was legendary, the 32-year-old heir who'd tripled the family fortune in just 5 years. "I'm Adana," she whispered. "Adana Eze." Chukwudi nodded, then gestured toward Zainab. "Your daughter. She's beautiful." Something in his voice made Adana look at him more closely. There was a hunger in his expression as he gazed at the baby, a longing so profound it was almost painful to witness. "Thank you," she said softly. The car navigated through Lagos traffic with practiced ease, heading toward Victoria Island, the wealthy part of the city, where Adana had only ever been as a housemaid, entering through service doors. "The private wing at Ivory Coast Hospital," Chukwudi instructed Tunde. Then to Adana, "They're the best. They'll take care of you properly." "Why are you helping me?" Adana asked, the question escaping before she could. "Stop it." Chukwudi was silent for a long moment, his eyes still on Zainab's sleeping face. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because," he said quietly, "some people would give everything they have for what you're holding in your arms, and no mother should have to face what you're facing alone." Adana didn't understand the depth of pain behind his words. Not yet. But as the luxury car carried them toward a destination she could never have afforded, she felt, for the first time in months, a fragile flutter of hope. She didn't know that Chukwudi Okoro had been married for 7 years. She didn't know that his wife had left him 3 months ago because of his infertility. She didn't know that his greatest shame was his inability to father a child, despite all his wealth and power. And she certainly didn't know that this chance collision would bind their lives together in ways neither of them could possibly imagine. Do you believe that encounters like this, between pain and destiny, really happen? Type yes or no. The private hospital room was unlike anything Adana had ever experienced. Soft cream walls, a television mounted above a polished wooden cabinet, and a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds. Through the wide window, she could see Victoria Island's skyline glittering in the evening light, a world that had always existed just beyond her reach. A kind nurse named Ngozi had examined her thoroughly, her expression growing concerned as she worked. "You're severely anemic," she'd said gently. "The bleeding was more serious than it should have been. You need rest, proper nutrition, and monitoring for at least a week." "A week?" Adana had protested weakly. "I can't afford—" "Everything is taken care of," Ngozi assured her. "Mr. Okoro has handled all the arrangements." That had been 6 hours ago. Now, as night fell over Lagos, Adana nursed Zainab in the comfortable bed, marveling at how different everything felt. Her daughter seemed calmer, here, as if even a newborn could sense safety and comfort. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Chukwudi entered, still wearing his expensive suit, though he'd loosened his tie. He carried a large bag that he set carefully on the chair. "How are you feeling?" he asked, maintaining a respectful distance. "Better," Adana admitted. "The doctors say I was in worse condition than I realized. If you hadn't—" Her voice trailed off, emotion clogging her throat. Chukwudi waved away her gratitude. "I brought some things for the baby. Clothes, diapers, formula, in case you need it." He hesitated, then added, "I wasn't sure what else might be helpful. Tell me in the comments what you would do if you were in Adana's position. Would you accept help from a stranger?" Adana stared at the bag, then at this mysterious man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she'd been too exhausted to pray. "Why are you doing all this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Chukwudi moved to the window, his back to her, shoulders tense. For a long moment he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with pain. "My wife left me 3 months ago," he said quietly. "We'd been married for 7 years. 7 years of trying to have a child. 7 years of treatment, specialists. Hope followed by disappointment. The problem was mine. I'm infertile. The doctors were very clear about that." Adana held Zainab closer, saying nothing, sensing he needed to continue. "Kemi, my wife, she wanted children more than anything. She tried to be understanding, but the strain—" He turned to face her, and his eyes held an ocean of grief. "She's remarrying next month, to someone who can give her what I couldn't." "I'm sorry," Adana whispered. "When I saw you on those steps with your daughter, I saw everything I've wanted and can never have, and I saw you struggling alone with something precious that you shouldn't have to face without help." He paused. "I know what it's like, to feel powerless. I just didn't want you to feel that way if I could do something about it." The raw honesty in his words touched something deep in Adana's heart. Here was a man with all the money in the world, yet broken by the one thing money couldn't buy. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. Chukwudi returned to the chair, sitting down heavily. "My family is pressuring me to remarry. They need an heir for the business empire. But the thought of going through that again, of disappointing another woman—" He shook his head. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, two broken people from completely different worlds, united by their separate griefs. "I have a proposition," Chukwudi said suddenly, leaning forward. and I want you to think about it carefully before you answer. Take days if you need to. Adana's pulse quickened. What kind of proposition? You need stability, a home, resources to raise your daughter properly. I need, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I need purpose, and I need my family to stop treating me like a failure. He met her eyes. Marry me. Let me give Zainab my name. Provide for both of you. In return, my family gets their heir, and I get to finally be a father, even if not by blood. Adana's mouth dropped open. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. It would be a business arrangement, of course. You'd have your own quarters in my home. No expectations beyond appearing together publicly as a family. You'd be financially secure. Zainab would have the best education, the best opportunities, and his voice softened, I would have the chance to be a father. This is insane, Adana breathed. You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be... You're a mother who was willing to leave a hospital while still bleeding because you had nowhere else to go, Chukwudi interrupted. You're someone who put her daughter's safety above her own pride. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Adana's mind reeled. Marriage? To a billionaire she'd met hours ago? It was absurd, impossible, the plot of a movie rather than real life. And yet, she looked down at Zainab, sleeping peacefully against her chest. What kind of life could she give her daughter? She had no job, no home, no family support. The streets of Lagos were unforgiving to single mothers with nothing. She'd witnessed it herself. Women forced into choices they never wanted to make, just to keep their children. Fed, I need to think, she whispered. Of course, Chukwudi stood. I've arranged for you to stay here as long as necessary. There's no pressure. But Adana, he paused at the door, think about what's best for Zainab. And think about whether giving me a chance to be a father is really such a terrible price to pay for security. After he left, Adana sat in the quiet hospital room, her mind spinning. Outside, Lagos continued its frenetic pace. Millions of people fighting, striving, surviving. Inside this bubble of luxury and safety, she held her daughter and faced an impossible choice. Marry a stranger and secure her daughter's future, or maintain her independence and face an uncertain, dangerous path alone. As Zainab stirred in her arms, making small sounds of contentment, Adana realized the choice had perhaps already been made. What wouldn't a mother do for her child? If this had happened in your city, what do you think would have been different? 3 days passed in the cocoon of the private hospital. 3 days of proper meals, medical care, and long hours of thinking. Ngozi, the nurse, had become something of a confidant, bringing Adana newspapers and magazines to pass the time, while also offering her own brand of wisdom. That Mr. Okoro he visits every day, Ngozi observed on the third morning, checking Adana's vitals. Brings gifts for the baby, asks about you. My sister works for the Okoro family. They're good people, strict but fair. And that man, he's different since his wife left. Sad, like something died inside him, Adana had noticed. Chukwudi came each evening, never staying long, always maintaining proper distance. He'd bring items for Zainab, a soft blanket, a mobile for the crib, tiny shoes decorated with pink flowers. He'd ask about Adana's health, her comfort, but never pressed about his proposal. On the afternoon of the third day, Adana made her decision. She called the nurses' station and asked them to tell Chukwudi she wanted to speak with him when he arrived. Then she spent the remaining hours alternating between certainty and panic, holding Zainab close and whispering promises to her sleeping daughter. Chukwudi arrived at 6 o'clock, as he had the previous evenings. This time, however, his expression was guarded, as if he already knew what was coming. You wanted to see me? He asked, remaining near the door. Drop a comment telling me what decision you think she's made and what you would choose in her position. I need to know something first, Adana said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. This arrangement, you said no expectations, but what does that really mean? What would you expect from me? Chukwudi came further into the room, settling into the chair he'd occupied during their previous conversations. I would expect you to live in my home, to appear with me at necessary social functions, my family's events, important business gatherings where a wife's presence is expected, to allow me to introduce Zainab as my daughter, to raise her as my own. He paused. I would expect courtesy and honesty, nothing more. And if someday I wanted to leave, if this arrangement stopped working, his jaw tightened, but he answered truthfully, we'd figure it out. I'm not a prison warden, Adana. I'm offering you security, not a cage, though I'd ask that we give it a real chance first, at least a year, for Zainab's sake so she can have stability. Adana took a deep breath. I'll do it. I'll marry you. Something flickered across Chukwudi's face. Relief, hope, fear, all mixed together. You're certain? I'm terrified, she admitted, but I'm also practical. You're offering my daughter a life I could never give her on my own. You're offering me a chance to be more than a struggling single mother, and she swallowed hard. I think maybe you deserve a chance to be the father you want to be, even if the circumstances are unusual. Chukwudi stood, pacing to the window and back, energy suddenly animating his frame. We'll need to move quickly. My mother has been arranging meetings with potential wives, traditional families, approved matches. If I'm going to present you to them, we need to be married first. Make it a fait accompli. How quickly? A week, 2 at most. A small ceremony just for legal purposes. Later we can have something larger if you want, to satisfy tradition and appearance. He stopped pacing, looking at her intently. I'll need to teach you about my family, our business, what they'll expect. And we'll need a story, how we met, how long we've known each other. Won't they know it's sudden? They'll suspect, Chukwudi admitted. But if we're already married, if Zainab already has my name, there's nothing they can do. And my mother, for all her traditionalism, desperately wants a grandchild. She'll accept it in time. The next days blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Chukwudi hired a lawyer to handle the marriage paperwork, discreetly. He brought Adana to his home, a sprawling mansion in Ikoyi that made her feel dizzy with its opulence, and showed her the quarters that would be hers. 3 rooms beautifully appointed with everything she could need, including a nursery for Zainab that brought tears to her eyes. His staff, led by a dignified older woman named Mama Patience, welcomed her with cautious courtesy. They'd loved Kemi, Chukwudi's first wife, and their loyalty showed in their reserved politeness. They'll warm up, Chukwudi assured her. Give them time. He was true to his word about teaching her. They spent hours in his study while Zainab slept, Chukwudi explaining his family's business empire, real estate holdings across Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, with investments in tech startups and manufacturing. His mother, Obiageli, was the family matriarch, formidable and uncompromising. His father had died 5 years earlier, leaving Chukwudi as the sole heir. My mother expected grandchildren by now, he explained. She blames me for Kemi's departure, though she'd never say it directly. This marriage, your pregnancy seeming to happen quickly, she'll be suspicious, but ultimately satisfied. You're asking me to lie to your mother, Adana said quietly. I'm asking you to let her believe what she wants to believe, Chukwudi corrected. That I've moved on, found someone else, and that Zainab is mine. Is that really so terrible? Adana didn't answer. The enormity of what she'd agreed to kept washing over her in waves. She was about to marry a man she barely knew, enter a world completely foreign to her, and live a lie that would become Zainab's truth. But when she looked at her daughter sleeping in the beautiful nursery, surrounded by safety and comfort, she couldn't bring herself to regret the choice. The wedding took place on a Thursday morning at the marriage registry. No fanfare, no celebration, just Chukwudi, Adana, Zainab, and 2 witnesses Chukwudi had arranged. Adana wore a simple, blue dress Chukwudi had bought for her and held Zainab while she spoke her vows. I, Adana Ize, take you, Chukwudi Okoro. The words felt surreal, like someone else was speaking them. But when the registrar pronounced them husband and wife, and Chukwudi gently kissed her forehead in a gesture more brotherly than romantic, Adana felt something shift. She was no longer alone. For better or worse, her life had changed irrevocably. That evening, Chukwudi held Zainab for the first time for an extended period, sitting in the nursery's rocking chair with surprising natural ease. Adana watched from the doorway as this powerful billionaire gazed at her daughter with such tender longing it made her chest ache. Thank you, he whispered, not looking up, for giving me this. Adana said nothing. She couldn't tell him that watching him with Zainab, seeing his genuine care and gentleness, she felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't expected. Not love, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. If this story has kept you hooked this far, it's a sign that it touched you. Leave a like so I know I'm on the right track. 2 weeks into her marriage, Adana was still learning to navigate her new life. The mansion felt less imposing now, though she still got lost occasionally in its many corridors. Mama Patience had thawed considerably, especially after seeing how devoted Chukwudi was to Zainab. The other staff followed her lead, treating Adana with growing warmth. But the real test came on a humid Saturday afternoon when Chukwudi announced his mother would be visiting for dinner. "She knows we're married?" Adana asked, panic rising in her throat. "I told her yesterday. She's not pleased I didn't inform her beforehand." Chukwudi's expression was carefully neutral. "But she wants to meet you and see her granddaughter. It will be fine." It didn't feel fine. Adana spent hours preparing, changing clothes 3 times, rehearsing the story they'd agreed upon, that they'd met months ago through mutual friends, had been seeing each other quietly and married quickly when she became pregnant. Each lie felt heavier on her tongue during practice. Obiageli Okoro arrived promptly at 7, emerging from a chauffeur-driven car like a queen surveying her kingdom. She was in her late 50s, elegant in traditional Iro and Buba, her wrapper's rich burgundy fabric speaking of wealth and status. Her face was striking, beautiful once, still commanding, with eyes that missed nothing. Comment below if you think the mother will accept Adana, or if this dinner will end in disaster. "Mama, welcome," Chukwudi said, greeting her with traditional respect, kneeling briefly as custom demanded. Those sharp eyes swept past him to land on Adana, who stood holding Zainab, fighting the urge to flee. The weight of that gaze was immense, assessing, calculating, judging. "So," Obiageli said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed, "this is the woman who married my son without the decency of a proper introduction to his family." "Mama, I told you the circumstances." "You told me excuses," Obiageli interrupted, then switched to Igbo, firing questions at Adana. "Kedu ebe isi? Where are you from? Who are your people? What is your family name?" Adana's Igbo was functional but not fluent, another mark against her she could see in Obiageli's expression. "I'm from Enugu," she answered carefully. "My family name is Eze. My father was a teacher before he passed. Eze from Enugu. And your mother?" "Also deceased." Not quite a lie. Her mother had disowned her, which felt like death of another kind. Obiageli's eyes narrowed. How convenient. No family to vouch for you, no relatives to verify your character. "And yet my son married you." She turned to Chukwudi. "Did you investigate her at all? Or were you so desperate to replace Kemi that you'd marry the first woman who'd have you?" "Mama!" Chukwudi's voice was sharp. "That's enough, is it?" Obiageli moved closer to Adana, studying Zainab with an intensity that made Adana's arms tighten protectively around her daughter. "This child, she's very light-skinned. She's a newborn," Chukwudi said. "Babies often look different than they will later." But Obiageli wasn't listening to him. Her eyes moved between Zainab and Chukwudi, comparing, calculating. When she looked up at Adana again, there was something new in her expression, suspicion sharpening into certainty. "How long did you say you'd been seeing my son before you married?" "Several months," Adana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Interesting, because my son was still with Kemi several months ago, trying to save his marriage. So either you're a liar, or you're the reason his marriage ended." Obiageli's voice was cold as ice. "Which is it?" The dinner that followed was an exercise in torture. Obiageli asked question after pointed question, poking holes in their story with the skill of a prosecutor. Chukwudi defended Adana at every turn, but even his interventions couldn't fully shield her from his mother's suspicion. "You work fast," Obiageli commented as dessert was served. "Meeting my son, getting pregnant, securing a marriage, all very efficient." "Mama, that's not what happened," Chukwudi said firmly. "Isn't it?" Obiageli set down her spoon with deliberate precision. "I may be old, but I'm not stupid. This girl appears from nowhere with a baby conveniently in need of a father, and you, desperate for a child, any child, marry her without thought or investigation." She turned to Adana. "How much did you plan this? Did you research my son? Did you know about his infertility before you accidentally bumped into him?" "No," Adana's voice cracked. "It wasn't like that. I didn't." "Then tell me the truth." Obiageli leaned forward. "Because this story you've both rehearsed, I don't believe a word of it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Adana looked at Chukwudi, saw the tension in his jaw, the conflict in his eyes. They'd agreed to lie, but his mother was too sharp, too perceptive. The lie wasn't holding. Chukwudi took a deep breath. "You want the truth, Mama? Fine. I met Adana 3 weeks ago outside a hospital. She'd just been discharged with nowhere to go. I helped her because..." His voice softened. because she had what I wanted more than anything, a daughter who needed a father. So yes, we married quickly. Yes, Zainab isn't mine, biologically, but she's mine in every way that matters. Adana's heart stopped. He told the truth, modified but essentially honest. Obiageli's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation. You married a complete stranger, she said slowly. A poor girl with a child, and you claim this baby as your own. Have you lost your mind? Maybe, Chukwudi said. But I'm tired of being pitied, Mama. Tired of being the son who failed to give you grandchildren. Adana gave me a chance to be a father. That's worth more than any traditional arrangement you could have made. Obiageli stood, her face unreadable. This is a mistake, a terrible mistake that will haunt you. She looked at Adana with something that might have been pity. And you, girl, you think you've secured your future? You've made a deal with complications you can't imagine. This family, this world, it will eat you alive. She left without another word, her departure leaving a void that seemed to suck all air from the room. Adana sank into her chair, trembling. She knows everything. It doesn't matter, Chukwudi said, but his voice lacked conviction. She'll come around. But as Adana held Zainab close that night, listening to her daughter's peaceful breathing, she wondered if Obiageli's words were prophecy. Had she traded one impossible situation for another equally dangerous? Had she saved Zainab from poverty, only to drag them both into a different kind of nightmare? Escreva, Adana, se você achou que ela realmente merecia. 6 months transformed everything. The suspicious staff became protective allies. Mama Patience treated Zainab like her own grandchild, and even the driver, Tunde, smiled warmly when he saw Adana now. The mansion that once felt like a museum became slowly and improbably something like home. But the most unexpected transformation was in the relationship between Adana and Chukwudi himself. It started small, conversations that extended beyond necessary coordination. Chukwudi began coming home earlier, eager to spend time with Zainab before her bedtime. He'd read to her in the nursery, his deep voice gentle with children's stories. And sometimes Adana would find herself lingering in the doorway, watching this powerful man reduced to putty by a baby's smile. "You're a natural," she told him one evening. Chukwudi looked up from where he sat on the floor, Zainab attempting to grab his watch. "I never knew it could feel like this. Every smile, every new sound she makes. It's like witnessing miracles." Those moments accumulated, shared laughter over Zainab's expressions. Late-night conversations when the baby's crying woke them both, sitting together in the kitchen, drinking tea while Zainab settled. Chukwudi teaching Adana about the business, discovering she had an intuitive head for numbers and strategy. "You could work for the company," he suggested one afternoon in his study, "if you wanted. Your insights today about the Abuja property were sharper than my acquisitions team's. Tell me in the comments if you believe marriages of convenience can turn into real love. I want to hear your thoughts." Adana enrolled in online business courses, hungry to prove she belonged in Chukwudi's world through more than just their arrangement. She learned to carry herself with confidence at the social functions they attended, where wealthy Lagos society scrutinized the mysterious woman who'd captured Chukwudi Okoro's heart. Obiageli remained distant but not hostile. She visited monthly, always bringing elaborate gifts for Zainab, always maintaining cool politeness with Adana. But Adana caught her watching sometimes, particularly when Chukwudi and Adana interacted with unconscious ease, and the older woman's expression would shift to something unreadable. The real change came on a Tuesday evening in late March. Chukwudi had been in Abuja for 3 days on business, the first time they'd been separated since the marriage. Adana was surprised by how much she missed his presence, missed their evening routines and easy conversations. When he returned, travel-worn and exhausted, Zainab had been fussy all evening. Adana was at her wit's end, pacing the nursery, when Chukwudi appeared in the doorway. "Let me," he said simply, taking the crying baby with practiced ease. Within minutes, Zainab had quieted, content against her father's chest. "You have magic, I don't," Adana said, smiling despite her exhaustion. "I missed you both," Chukwudi said softly, and something in his voice made Adana look up sharply. The air between them shifted, charged with possibility. They stood in the soft lamplight of the nursery, Zainab sleeping between them, and Adana felt her heart begin to race. "Chukwudi, I know we agreed this was just an arrangement," he interrupted, not meeting her eyes. "I know we said no expectations, but Adana, these past months, I can't pretend anymore. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being pretend for me. Adana's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I've fallen in love with you. The words came out rushed, as if he'd been holding them back for too long. With your strength, your intelligence, the way you love Zainab, the way you've made this house feel like a home. I love waking up knowing you're here. I love our conversations, your laugh, the way you've transformed my entire world. Tears sprang to Adana's eyes. You can't mean that. We're from completely different worlds. I'm not. You're everything, Chukwudi said fiercely. You're exactly what I never knew I needed. But I need to know, is there any chance you could feel the same? Or will this always be just an arrangement for you? Adana's mind whirled with memories. Chukwudi's gentleness with Zainab, his patience teaching her about his world, the way he'd defended her to his mother, the flutter she'd felt watching him read bedtime stories, the loneliness when he'd been in Abuja, the way her heart leaped when she heard his car in the driveway. I think, she said slowly, I've been falling for you for months. I just didn't let myself acknowledge it because it seemed too impossible. You're Chukwudi Okoro, and I'm just... You're my wife, he interrupted. You're Zainab's mother. You're the woman I want to build a real life with, not just an arrangement. He shifted Zainab to one arm, using his free hand to gently touch Adana's cheek. If you'll have me, for real. This time, Adana leaned into his touch, tears flowing freely now. Yes, I want that too. Their kiss was gentle, tentative, a first kiss, despite months of marriage. Zainab slept peacefully between them, the child who'd brought them together, as her parents discovered that sometimes the most unexpected collisions lead to the most extraordinary destinations. The next morning, Adana woke to find Chukwudi in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast, badly. She laughed, taking over, and they worked together in comfortable synchronicity that felt earned rather than arranged. My mother is coming for lunch, Chukwudi mentioned casually. I thought we should tell her about us being real now. Adana's hands stilled on the pan. How do you think she'll react? Honestly, I think she already knows. She's perceptive like that. He came up behind Adana, wrapping his arms around her waist, a gesture that felt both new and perfectly natural. And I think, despite her reservations, she sees how happy we are, how happy Zainab is. That matters to her more than she lets on. Obiageli arrived at noon, her expression typically inscrutable. But when she saw Chukwudi and Adana together, really together, their body language speaking of intimacy and genuine affection, something softened in her face. So, she said after the meal, you've stopped pretending. Chukwudi took Adana's hand. We were never pretending about the important things, Mama. We just needed time to catch up to what was already there. Obiageli studied them for a long moment. Then surprisingly, she smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Your father, may he rest in peace, used to say that love finds us in the strangest ways. I suppose he was right. She turned to Adana. You've made my son happy. You've given him purpose. And that child, she gestured to Zainab, playing on her mat. She's brought joy back to this family. Perhaps your collision wasn't an accident after all. As the afternoon sun filtered through the windows, painting everything in golden light, Adana reflected on the impossible journey from those hospital steps to this moment. She'd been desperate, broken, without hope. Chukwudi had been wealthy, but empty, successful, yet purposeless. Together they'd built something neither could have created alone, a family born from necessity, but sustained by love, proof that sometimes the most unlikely collisions create the most beautiful destinations. Zainab laughed, reaching for her father, and Chukwudi scooped her up with such natural love that Obiageli's eyes misted. Mama? Adana ventured, feeling brave. Would you like to hold your granddaughter? Obiageli's composure cracked slightly. She took Zainab with tender care, and as she gazed at the baby, Adana saw acceptance finally in the older woman's face. That evening, after Obiageli left and Zainab slept, Chukwudi and Adana stood on their balcony overlooking Lagos. The city sprawled before them, millions of lights, representing millions of stories. No regrets? Chukwudi asked, pulling her close. Adana thought of everything. The fear, the uncertainty, the impossible choice that had led her here. Not a single one, she said honestly. You saved us that day, but Chukwudi, I think we saved you too. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and finally her lips. The best collision of my life. And in that moment, with the city alive beneath them, and her daughter sleeping safely inside, Adana knew that sometimes The most desperate moments lead to the most extraordinary transformations. Their story began with a collision born of necessity, but it became something far more powerful, a testament to the unexpected ways love can find us, even in our darkest moments. This is just the beginning of their journey together, but if this story has moved you, if it has made you believe in unexpected second chances, don't go anywhere just yet. Something incredible is waiting for you on the next screen, a story so powerful you won't believe it's true. Click now on the video on the screen because what happens next will shock you completely. Trust me, you need to see it.